everyone, I'm Natalia, and today I will be sharing with you the story of how Duolingo went from being a completely free app generating no revenue to one of the most successful subscription businesses in the world. This has been a journey where we had to face lots of challenges, lots of experiments, and lots of lessons learned in balancing a mission to bring free education to the world with the realities of a business that needs to generate revenue. But before I start, let me share with you a little bit about myself. So I am originally from Venezuela, and I grew up in Argentina, and so my native language is Spanish. I learned English in school, and growing up, used lots of online resources for free to prepare to take exams that I needed in order to come study in the US. And so I really learned firsthand the power of education and language learning in opening opportunities for someone's life. So I've been super passionate about accessible education for a very long time, which is why I joined Duolingo as an intern 10 years ago. I was very excited about the mission. I was the second PM at the company at the time. So we were a small startup, about 30-something people, based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the company was founded. And today, I went from being an intern, today I'm a senior director of product at Duolingo, where I've focused most of my career there in essentially value creation from both the free side, so making our free learning experience valuable, but also balancing that mission to bring free education with the needs of the business. And so maybe let's do a quick show of hands. Who here has used Duolingo before? Okay, most people have, but some people have not. So just in case you're not familiar with Duolingo, we're essentially a language learning app. And it's an app that you can use on your phone or on the web. The lessons are super short and bite-sized. You know, language learning can be a little bit intimidating, but we try to make it fun and engaging and so fun that you want to come to the app, back to the app every single day. And so these are some screenshots here that you can see of what the app looks like. And just to share a little bit about the impact that Duolingo has had so far, so right now we have over 125 million MAUs and over 10 million paid subscribers. So not only is Duolingo one of the largest education apps in the world, it's also one of the top subscription businesses as well. We have lots of different languages available in the app, over 40 different languages, from Spanish to French. And we actually very recently also added new subjects beyond language learning. We also teach math in the app. We teach music. I actually recently myself bought a piano because I've been learning music on the app. And as very recently, we launched chess. So I'm saying this as a person. If you have not checked out the chess subject on Duolingo, definitely check it out because it's so much fun. I've always been a chess nerd myself, but I'm learning a lot on Duolingo. So that's a little bit about our impact. Duolingo, as I said, was founded in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It actually started as a PhD project. So Severin Hacker, our CTO, founded the company with his advisor, his PhD advisor, Luis Bonan. And when they started, they both are also actually immigrants. And they learned English, and that allowed them to come study to the US. And so when Duolingo first started, they had this mission to develop the best education in the world and make it universally available. So from the very beginning, Duolingo wanted to provide excellent education for free. But they realized, look, they need to balance this mission with making money to sustain itself over a long period of time. Duolingo had to also generate revenue. And so this is actually something that very few people know, but when Duolingo first launched, it was entirely free, so we did not have ads, in-app purchases, and subscriptions like we do today. It was entirely free, and the way we were hoping we could generate revenue was we had these little exercises at the end of each lesson, which we called immersion. And the idea was essentially you would learn a few words, you would learn some grammar in the language that you were learning, and then you had to translate that content to your native language. And the idea was that if you had enough people translating the content, you could later sell those translations to like newspapers, to blogs, and this was the idea behind the immersion exercise. It's, on the one hand, learners could apply their learnings to the real world by reading newspapers and translating them, but then on the other hand, we would gain revenue from that. However, unfortunately, we eventually realized that while very creative and very innovative, this first monetization experiment was not going to work at the scale that we really needed to. In fact, it's good that we got out of that business because you probably know today it's quite easy to translate articles to different languages, particularly with tools like ChatGPT. And so, that was like a very big challenge in the first few years of Duolingo is how could we generate revenue while staying true to our mission, given that the original plan for how we would monetize we knew was not going to work. And so the first lesson that I want to share with you today in my 10 years working at Duolingo is the importance of keeping the app completely free. So the interesting thing about creating a free app is that it's not only just important for our mission, we actually are very much convinced that it's also critical to our growth and to our success as a business. And while it could be the case that maybe if we were to totally paywall the app tomorrow, we might be able to generate more revenue in the short term. In the long term, we just would not have grown and been as successful as we've been so far if it weren't because the core app is completely free. And I'm going to dive deeper into why in a second, but first, let me give you an overview of how Duolingo monetizes. So I just shared with you earlier some screenshots of the Duolingo app and some of our exercises. So when you're doing a Duolingo lesson, it's completely ad-free. You can just complete a lesson without seeing a single ad. However, at the end of your lesson, we do show you an ad. And there's essentially two types of ads at Duolingo. We have third-party ads, which we call network ads, and we also have in-house ads. So these are ads that essentially promote one of our subscriptions. And you may ask, what does your subscription do? Well, it actually gets rid of ads. Among other things, we also provide some other optionality in how to learn. So we have ads at the end of each lesson. We also have subscriptions that get rid of ads and provide some additional optional learning features. And finally, we have in-app purchases to equip things like streak freeze, which I'm going to talk about later, and some other kind of items that are not really critical to the learning experience. So ads, in-app purchases, and subscriptions, these are the ways that Duolingo monetizes, and the biggest one by far is actually our subscriptions. And I give this context just so that I can explain this slide here, which shows our Duolingo flywheel. That's like how we call it internally. So it first starts with a free product that delivers on our promise to teach, to be effective at teaching a language, also in a way that's very fun and engaging. And we we spend most of our resources actually in that free product. And the nice thing about making the app free and making it so engaging and delightful is that this creates a lot of brand love. So if you've heard people talk about Duolingo before, a lot of people just really love our brand. They love our green owl, and they love to share about Duolingo to their friends. And so this brand love later fuels word of mouth, which in turn, of course, fuels user growth. So even today, word of mouth continues to be the largest source of our DAUs. So people who register to come back to the app, it's usually because they heard one of their friends talk about it. And especially even early on, we spend essentially $0 advertising Duolingo. We just relied on creating an amazing free product that delivered value and that delighted learners. And now, because Duolingo has managed to grow to tens of millions of learners, then we also have had a very large user base that then we can show the subscription ads to and monetize that way. And now, what do we do with this monetization? A, we make the product better. And B, another fun fact here is that when people subscribe to the app, actually their likelihood to stay in the app and keep learning for longer goes up. So monetization makes both the free product better, and it also helps our growth, and it helps people stay engaged over a long period of time. So we have this Duolingo flywheel that starts and is enabled by an amazing free product. And it works. So here's a little graph of how Duolingo has grown. You know, as I said earlier, I joined 10 years ago. Back then, we had about 1 million learners. And now we have tens of millions. So we really believe that free is core to our growth and not just our mission. So to recap, you know, one of the lessons that we've learned is the importance of keeping the app free. And of course, for different apps and different businesses, it will make sense to make other parts of the product free. But for us, we've learned that keeping the core experience free and investing a lot in that free experience has been just instrumental to our growth, for our users, and also for monetization. Okay, so the second lesson here is to make learning fun. And you know, the fun thing is that while creating a very effective learning tool that is free might sound great, it actually is not enough. And the reason I say that is, you know, there have always been accessible ways to learn a language, you know, some more effective than others. But if you think about it, you can learn a language by reading a book. There's like textbooks to learn languages. But why don't people stick around and use those textbooks as much as they use Duolingo? The main reason is that learning a language is hard, and it takes a very long time. It doesn't happen overnight. So the hardest thing about learning a language is to keep yourself motivated over a really long period of time. It takes years to learn a language. And so for us, it's been really key to build features in the app that make the learning experience as fun and as engaging as possible. And I'm going to walk you through a few of our gamification mechanics in the app that have really increased DAUs, so daily active users, and retention of those users. The first one is streak. If you've used Duolingo, you're probably familiar with it. A streak is essentially this like flame icon that's accompanied by a number. And what this number does is it tracks the number of days in a row that you've come to Duolingo to do a lesson. If you come to Duolingo but you don't finish your lesson, or if you don't come to Duolingo altogether, you will lose that streak. So that number will reset to 0. And so this streak, what it does is it taps into loss aversion to drive consistency in learning. This is something that a textbook would not have. And today we have about 25% of our DAUs, so about 1 in 4 DAUs with a streak of over a year. So that's a really long time, and most of our users are just like very, very committed thanks to the streak. And we've spent so many years iterating on the streak. In fact, the streak came about because our founders, so Luis Bonan and Severin Hacker, when they first were creating Duolingo, they would check in, let's say after the weekend, and they're like, hey, did you use the app this weekend? And they're like, no, I didn't. I was kind of had something else going on, so I didn't end up studying. And so that's where the idea of a streak came about, is that if you just force yourself to come to the app every single day, you will form a habit and just will never forget to learn. And after 10 years of iterating on the streak, it's still one of our key levers for growth. So some things that we've iterated on is, just this animation that you see right here. We spend a lot of time celebrating milestones for your streak. We also give you streak freezes. If you maybe have a long streak, but then you forget to practice one day, we might just freeze the streak for you. And so we've just created streaks. We turned it into a vector of iteration that's still a very powerful lever for growth. So I talked about this streak. Now let me talk a little bit about delight. And Duolingo really cares a lot about design, creating a very delightful and engaging user experience. You can see here, you'll notice a few details that demonstrate how much care we put into the design. So for example, once you get an exercise correct, we show little sparkles in the progress bar. And we tell you, oh, you did 3 exercises in a row correct. You can see the little character here reacting to your answer. If you get something right, they will celebrate. If not, they will, they will frown. And so we know, because we A/B test all of these changes, that these are not just cosmetic changes. These types of changes also drive a lot of our growth. And maybe earlier on, we just couldn't quite capture the impact that this level of delight had in our engagement. But today we have that user base to A/B test it on, and we know that this works. And even if it's not captured in A/B tests, we do believe this contributes to brand love and contributes to our growth. Okay, so now let me talk about social. So, if you were to take a language class in the real life, you might still go to that class every day, partly because you might have, made friends in the class, you have people keeping yourself accountable, there's the teacher in the class who will take attendance. And so it's a little bit easier to stay committed to a real life class. But on Duolingo, there's just not, at least initially, you would just learn on your own. So you didn't really have any type of accountability for learning. And so a few years ago, we really started to ask ourselves, what are some ways that we can incorporate social into our app to make you feel like you're learning with other people, not just on your own? And one of the ways that we incorporated a social components is leaderboards. And leaderboards has become one of the key ways to increase time spent learning on the app, so increasing the number of lessons that people do every day. And we actually, the first iteration of leaderboards didn't quite work. It was actually decreasing the time that people would spend in the app. And one of the things we learned here is that it's very important to actually show peers that have similar XP to you when you are creating a leaderboard. If you're just comparing yourself with global elites, it's just not going to be nearly as motivating. And so it's very important that for us, that this level of competition was reachable and fair. Now let me show you another example of how we incorporated social into our app. And some people are very competitive and they loved the leaderboards. My mom is one of these people. She just loves leaderboards. She's in the Diamond League, which is the top league, and she loves it. But some people are not very competitive and they actually prefer to learn with others in a more collaborative way. And so one of the things we did is we created this iteration of the streak, which we call the friend streak. So a friend streak is a shared streak between two friends. And what this means is there's a shared responsibility for both of you to come back to the app every day to learn. If one of you does not come to the app to learn, then the streak will break. So it essentially turns daily practice into a social contract, and it also just helps learners feel like they're learning with other people. You can send kudos to your friends, and so it helps build accountability and long-term retention. And so I just shared with you a few examples of how we try to make learning fun, but I just want to say, we spend so much time on gamification, on design, on the simplicity of our UX to make sure that we are building a tool that's not only effective, but also delightful and fun to use. And again, going back to that flywheel I was talking about earlier, we believe this fuels word of mouth and user growth. Okay, so I've talked a lot about engagement and making the learning experience fun. Now I'm going to talk about making the experience actually effective. And in the early days of Duolingo, it kind of can be easy to focus more on these engagement mechanics I was talking about, because you can see the impact on the business directly by running an A/B test. We can see okay, this change led to an increase in retention or DAUs or time spent in the app. But it's also very important not to forget that actually people come to Duolingo to learn, not just to have fun. And games actually do a way better job, or social media do a way better job than Duolingo at entertaining. And so it's been super important for us to remember that if we don't help people learn, they will just go somewhere else because they don't come here for entertainment. And I will share an example of where we did not follow this rule, but it's always super important to start with the learning problem or the user problem that you're trying to solve. For us, we think about learning gaps. So what are the things in the app where we're not really delivering value, or we're not teaching very effectively? Historically, Duolingo has done a great job, for example, at vocabulary and grammar, but not so much with speaking or listening or producing the language. And so we called those language skills learning gaps that we needed to close. And now whenever we start a new feature, we think about that. We start with that. Once you've identified the user need, then you find a way to implement it in a way that's fun and effective. You don't first figure out what's fun and then try to retrofit learning. And you also try not to build redundant features, which we have done at Duolingo for sure. So let me share with you a case study here, which is Duo TV. So Duo TV was a new section of the app where we were seeing the popularity of video in apps. Video is a very effective way to drive engagement. So we were like, well, learning a language takes hundreds of hours. The more engaging we make Duolingo, the more people will spend time in the app. And so what if we made Duolingo just as engaging as watching a Netflix show? So we created this tab that had a bunch of videos in the language that you were learning. And then at the end of each video, we would ask a few questions about what you had learned. And The problem with this was that, as I said earlier, we kind of started with a business need rather than a learning need. And we said, like, okay, what would keep people entertained and coming back to the app? Videos. And so it was this entertainment-first approach to building a new feature that ended up with a product that didn't really make sense. It was kind of unclear for the learner what they were actually learning. We weren't really reinforcing the curriculum throughout like we do with our general path. And there was just not enough scaffolding. So we had leaned too much to the direction of making things fun while losing sight of learning. So this was a very important lessons for us, which is to make learning fun, keep it free, but also really focus on the user problem, or in our case, the learning need that we're trying to solve. Okay, so the fourth lesson I want to share with you today is to use AI wisely. So I just talked about some of the learning gaps that we've had early on at Duolingo. Duolingo was built to teach essentially for beginners initially. So it was great at teaching vocabulary, words and their definitions and grammar, so how you can put words together to create meaning. But whenever we tried to fill some of the other gaps, like conversation, like producing the language, we were facing several scalability challenges. All of our content was created by hand. It was handwritten. As I said earlier, we have over 40 different languages on Duolingo and over 100 different courses, because we have to create different courses if your native language is English versus Spanish. So we have a lot of content that needed to be created manually. And so whenever we were creating a new feature that would solve a user need, we were finding that it was extremely hard to scale, and it would take years to scale those new features. And then on top of that too, the best way to learn, one of the best ways to learn is when you have someone right in front of you teaching you one-on-one, so adapting to your own unique needs, your own weaknesses. And so personalization was also something that we try to solve through technology, but we were hitting lots of limits. And so we had this challenge around creating scalable features that were personalized. But sometime in 2022, we actually came across this opportunity to have a partnership with OpenAI right before they launched the ChatGPT, the better version of their LLM. And this opportunity allowed us to essentially create features in a way that would be very scalable and personalized to the learner. But one risk about AI is, as I said earlier, with making things very engaging and fun, sometimes when you get access to a brand new tool or technology, you're just like, okay, let's use this brand new technology and then figure out how it can serve a learner need. And we actually did that. We once created this chatbot that was supposed to be a tutor, but it was just too much. It was too not very well defined what you would go to this tutor for. And so we went back and we remembered, okay, let's start with the learning gaps. In our case, we had a few gaps in the app, like explaining your mistakes. Each person, when they use Duolingo, they may translate a sentence in a word in a way that is very different from others. And so we need to give personalized feedback on their particular mistakes, something that we previously could not do. Because of the scaling constraints I was talking about, we also were having a hard time providing speaking and listening features. And then finally, you probably, when you learn a language, a lot of people, they learn it because they want to travel to that country. And so we also wanted to provide learners with a way to prepare them for the real world. So to have conversations in that language, like at a coffee shop or a restaurant. And so we used AI to create 3 brand new features. These were explain my answer. So whenever you would make a mistake in one of our lessons, we would just use ChatGPT to generate a specific explanation of what exactly you had gotten wrong, and that solved the explanation problem. We also created a brand new feature called Video Call with Lily. So Lily is one of our characters. She has a very unique personality, and the fun part about it is that we actually had a few years back tried or experimented with creating real-life tutors. But the problem with that is not only is that approach very expensive and scalable and not very affordable, there was also the problem that when you're first learning a language, you actually can get very shy, or you don't want to make mistakes. And we were finding that people, when they were, having like a video call with a tutor, they would freeze and they would like end the call immediately, and they would just not subscribe. And so Video Call with Lily was just a great way of allowing people to practice and talk to this character in a way that felt, a little more safe, like you could make mistakes and nobody was going to care. And then finally, roleplay. So roleplay, similar to Video Call with Lily, was a great way to provide conversation practice, but in realistic context. So you're, in this case, not just talking to a friend, but you're talking to a barista or a waiter at a restaurant. So that's how we use AI to really help solve some of these learning needs. So again, for us, using AI wisely meant really thinking about the user problem, not starting with the technology and then figuring out later how to retrofit learning to it. All right, so the next lesson I have here is around clarifying your value. So I've talked a bunch about how to create value by creating a free product that people love, making the app extremely fun and engaging. Learning a language takes a very long time, so you have to make it fun. You have to make people want to come back to the app every day. And finally, using AI to create new features that address learner needs. But all of this really it might not do much if you're not really communicating clearly that value to your learners. And so this lesson here is a lot about that. So I talked about the 3 features we launched with our partnership with OpenAI. And the problem initially is we couldn't offer these features for free because they were quite expensive. So each lesson was, significantly expensive. We could not offer it for our tens of millions of users for free. And so what we did is we launched a new tier called Duolingo Max. So as I said earlier, the main way that Duolingo monetizes is through our subscriptions. And our subscriptions, they get rid of ads, and they also provide brand new or different options for learning. And Super it had some learning features, but we launched Duolingo Max to provide these brand new AI-powered features. And I actually here have a real email, a part of an email that we send learners when we first launched Duolingo Max. And you can probably see a few problems here already. We say you should be one of the first to try Duolingo Max, one of our most advanced plans yet, with all the benefits of Super and also new features powered by artificial intelligence. So I want to focus on that last piece because that was the problem. So when we launched Duolingo Max, we did see some success, but we also, through user research, we realized like the messaging was really not resonating. People had no idea what Duolingo Max was about, what it offered, and you might be able to guess why. Like, we internally, we were so excited about the new technology, AI, and so we put that front and center in all of our Duolingo Max ads. It's advanced learning, it's AI powered, it's the better way to learn. But that's like too abstract for a regular learner. And so what we did is we rebranded the whole subscription. So instead of focusing on the technology and how the features were built, instead we decided to pick one user need, so really focus our messaging and double down on it. And in our case, it was video call with Lily or having conversations and getting confident in the language you're learning. So this became a lot more concrete, and people could just connect the value of the subscription to their daily usage of Duolingo. So here you can see a few examples of how we advertise the product after the user finished their lesson, or on our learning path, or on one of our subscription tabs. And this was just massive for us, so really putting video call with Lily front and center and messaging the subscription around conversation and speaking. And we actually, if you notice, we're not really promoting explain my answer here. And that was on purpose. Like the focus also just helped us sell the subscriptions way better. And so we learned, clear messaging just can really drive bookings growth, and really clarifying and communicating your value in a way that speaks to the user need is very important. So that was another lesson that we learned. Okay, so when we look back on this journey, there's these 5 lessons that I talked about today that I try to keep, I try to keep in mind every time I'm working on a new feature or promoting our subscriptions and our products. So the first one is to keep it free. So as a reminder, this is creating a free app. It's how we drive growth and brand love. The second part is to make it fun, make your experience extremely delightful, fun to use. This does pay off in loyalty, in retention, and actually, borrow gamification mechanics. You would maybe not intuitively think that you can turn learning into a game, but it works. So it probably works for other industries as well, not just learning. Third is to remember to make it work. At the end of the day, people are coming to Duolingo to learn, not just to have fun. So really keep the learner need in mind. Use AI wisely. Again, similar to the previous one, start with the learner need in mind and then figure out how AI can help. In our case, it was with scaling and personalization. And then finally, clarify your value. So you can do all of the above and create amazing features, but if you're not being very clear about how you're helping the user, they might just not purchase your product. And so that's actually it for me today. So hope you enjoyed learning about these lessons in balancing, Duolingo's mission to create a free app and accessible education with the realities of, being a business that needs to sustain itself over a very long period of time. So thank you.